llamaste hoy corazón, si tú bien sabes que no puedo estar sin escuchar tu dulce voz. ¿Qué te pasó? ¿Acaso ya no te intereso? ¿O es que otro amor llegó a tu pecho para robarme tu calor? Si te arrepentiste de esa ilusión, tan solo te pido que me devuelvas el corazón, porque no me llamaste hoy, vida mía. Maldigo ese teléfono que un día pudo traerme tu amor. Porque no me llamaste hoy, corazón, si tú bien sabes que no puedo estar sin escuchar tu dulce voz. ¿Qué te pasó? ¿Acaso ya no te intereso? ¿O es que otro amor llegó a tu pecho para robarme tu calor? Si te arrepentiste de esa ilusión, tan solo te pido que me devuelvas el corazón, porque no me llamaste hoy, vida mía. Maldigo ese teléfono que un día pudo traerme tu amor, pudo traerme tu amor, pudo traerme tu amor.
Back here on Global Village, and we just played a song that's giving you was telling you front and center directly what we're going to be talking about in the next time here on Global Village. We're going to be talking about Los Zafiros, and we just heard them doing Maldito Teléfono. Oh, that darn telephone. Now we could say Maldito Celular, I guess you could say. That darn cellular, but back then it was just, of course, the telephone. And we're talking about Los Zafiros, which is a great group that recorded in Cuba back. We'll hear more about that, but back in the 60s in Cuba, again, as I mentioned. And I am so excited because one of the premiums that we have is a great DVD that's all about this wonderful group. It's called Los Zafiros, the Sapphires, Music from the Edge of Time, and it's a film by Lorenzo De Stefano, and that is who we have in the studio right now to talk about this wonderful production. So welcome to the show, Lorenzo.
Kathy, pleasure to be here. Thanks.
I'm so happy that you could come down. I know you're coming down from the Santa Barbara area. Of course, you were on Canto Tropical last weekend with Armando Nila at Caballero Salcero, so we thank you for that as well. You were on by telephone. And we're offering this premium, and when you first contacted me, I thought, oh my God, a DVD, a documentary about Los Zafiros? I never thought I would see that in my lifetime because, well, I'll just go ahead. Who are the Los Zafiros?
Well, you know, I discovered them for myself back in the late 90s. I had been going to Cuba since 93. I directed a play there, and as a photographer, I was in and out a bunch of times. But they were a pop group from the early 62 till about the early 70s that defied the embargo in the sense and was playing American-inspired Doo Wop and R&B, along with compositions by some of the great Cuban composers, Rolando Vergara and Nestor Mili, and some terrific people. So they became the favorites, as shown in the film. They're still revered there by old and young. It's an amazing story.
I knew their music. I played their music, and I hear the description doo-wop, Cuban doo-wop, kind of the equivalent of the Beatles, also in terms of their fame. But when I saw this DVD, it gave me a whole. They were tremendous guys in the band, in the group, more or less, and voices unbelievable. clips that entry that you did, and hear their performances and see them travel around to people on the streets who are remembering them. It just made their music so much more present to me and much more dynamic. So where did you get the idea to do this film?
Well, it was like a virus, it comes in and infects you, and if you're a filmmaker, you go for it, I couldn't have done it without the two families, the Cancio family in Florida and the Galbán family in Cuba. Those are the two surviving men. Miguel Cancio, who's the only survivor now, who's in Florida in his 80s, and Manuel Galbán, the musical director and musician of the group, 4 singers and a musician, along with many sidemen and talented Cuban musicians. Once I got the family support, because you can't get in without that, especially being a North American filmmaker. So it was a great privilege. It's not an unknown group. There's a very famous group that they entrusted to me, which is great. Privilege.
So I think that's what made the movie so much more touching, is because you were able to connect with, as you mentioned, Manuel Galbán, and I guess he's since passed, and as well as Miguel Cancio, who's in Miami now, and you were able to bring Miguel back to Cuba, meet Manuel after many years of not being together, right? And then you met the family members of the other members who had passed, many of them many years before that. And it was just so lovely to see, first of all, the two veterans of the group connect, then how they connected with the families of the members who had passed. It was so touching. It just made you realize what a brotherhood that they had when they were together.
Yeah, well, it's a family group. A lot of intermarriage between the groups, despite all the philandering that went on the road. The news got back to the wives very quickly, a lot of chisme going on, But they were still very beloved. And yeah, I realized, as Galbán says in the film, he says, this is about the público, the family, the neighborhood. Do you get it? Are you getting it? To me, he says, do you understand what I'm talking about? And it very clearly was that. In Cayo Hueso, the neighborhood which they came from, it's just in Havana. And it was an education for me,
Well, we were so happy as well that you've offered the DVD to give away as a premium. And I want to play, I guess, the trailer from the movie, from the documentary, the film, from Los Zafiros, the Sapphires, music from the edge of time. And I want to remind you that this is a premium that we're offering right now for a pledge of $60 or more. So all you have to do is give us a call right now at 818-985-5735. Hit 2 to get to the call center. And you can make this film, a copy of this film in the DVD form to part of your collection. And I mean, you're really going to enjoy it. It's just so full of music, all the sights and sounds of Havana, the clips that you have of the group performing. It's just really delightful. So let's give a listen to the trailer right now, get people kind of an idea of what they might have. We have lots more music of Los Zafiros to fill some time with too, but reminding you that this DVD is a premium for your pledge of $60 or more. 818-985-5735.
To regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States.
They were right there at the edge, at a transitional period, politically and culturally.
Señoras y señores, Los Zafiros!
When I was in Cuba, what I wanted to listen to was the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. So when the Zafiros went out in Cuba, all the young guys, all my friends and all that, kind of related to them. It sounded French, it sounded American.
Los Zafiros, what does that mean? The sapphires. So they had the Motown-type choreography with the step.
4 guys from a little neighborhood in Havana. They become popular. They're swept up into the recording industry. They were world music before world music was world music.
Caminando por las calles del pueblecito natal, con su tipo espiritual, ella va luciendo el taller, con la bata remangada, sonando su
por nuestros hermanos, Ignacio, Quique y el Chino.
El Chino.
Nicolás, ven a gozar, yo vengo regando flores desde Santiago a La Habana, yo vengo regando flores.
So that was just the trailer from the film Los Zafiros, the Sapphires, music from the Edge of Time. I know that Los Zafiros made their name in the 60s. They recorded, they traveled widely. They really gained a lot of fame. And then what caused them to stop performing?
Well, you know, post-revolutionary Cuba, as far as I can find out from our research, was a time of great elation. You know, they were free of the Batista government, the exploitation. A lot of hope, but also a lot of challenge, you know, and as is often mentioned about Los Zafiros, analogous with the Beatles, coming after the Kennedy assassination to bring hope and joy to people, which the Beatles did in a huge way, which Los Zafiros, the Beatles of Cuba, often called, did in their own way to give a spiritual support to the people of Cuba. They traveled with the Music Hall of Cuba, a touring group of musicians and dancers, and to Moscow, to Poland, France, but not to the United States, to countries friendly to Cuba at the time. Drink, behavior,
got caught up in that life, huh?
Sexaholics, you know, the whole thing. Galbán was the most stable of the group, and Cancio, but they were young guys, you know, and they partied hard, and caught up with them, as well as changing tastes, you know, but they always remained popular. And then now, when we made the film, was 30 years later. Now it's 50 years later. The movie's about 20 years old now. Loved and admired.
Mind you that we're talking about Los Zafiros, the Sapphires, music from the Edge of Time, a wonderful DVD that we have offering to you for a pledge of $60 or more. Don't forget 818-985-5735. Hit 2 to get to the call center. You know, the film, as I mentioned, just brings their music so much alive, as well as what you talk about, the challenges they face. You know, how many people that go get that notoriety and they just get caught up in the lifestyle, and it doesn't necessarily do them a lot of good. And I think that's, again, why I mentioned it was so touching when you brought Miguel and Manuel together in Cuba so they could reminisce about the heydays of their wonderful work with Los Zafiros. But it's interesting to know that they're so well remembered in Cuba. They're still much loved. And there's a Nuevos Zafiros.
Yes, there's a tribute group, Los Nuevos Zafiros, begun in the 80s with El Chino Hernandez, who was the heartthrob of the group, the super good-looking sex magnet guy. And he was far past that time, but this group of musicians came together. They're still doing it. He died in 95, El Chino. But they're still around, Los Nuevos Zafiros. They play regularly in Cuba. And they're in the movie, you know, a particularly touching scene where they play Nombre de Mujer, Ophelia, and in the crowd are young kids and parents, grandparents, and they all know the lyrics.
And they're all singing along.
We couldn't believe that.
I couldn't believe that either when I was watching it. They're all singing along, even the young kids.
And the composer was there too. Guillermo Bayan Pacheco was in the crowd.
And that was also very touching. It made you want to cry when you saw that he was in the crowd listening to them doing his music.
These people have suffered a lot over the years for their cause, and the moments of joy are not rare. The Cubans are resilient, if anything. And so, but Los Zafiros captured that, you know.
Yeah, it certainly was an era, too, when you see them performing with those great suits from the 60s and just wonderful footage. Let's give a listen to a tune that's from the music that accompanies the film. We're going to be listening to a tune called Hermosa Havana. It's a beautiful tune. Again, to show you that they were more than just doo-wop. They were just an incredible group. So let's give a listen to that. Let's see where I've got it, and we'll be back to talk more to Lorenzo. Don't forget that we're offering this DVD for a pledge of $60 or more. Just give us a call, 818-985-5735. Los Zafiros.
Bello es tu prado, lindas son tus calles, bello es tu mar, Havana.
A beautiful, beautiful tune, Hermosa Havana. And as you were saying, Lorenzo, they were very proud of their Cuba and of their city, La Habana. And that song really expresses that so well. So let me just, let me give you just the short description here. Los Zafiros were a Cuban close harmony vocal group working from 1962 to 1976. The group was part of the feeling movement inspired by American Doo-Wop groups such as the Platters. Their music was a fusion of Cuban genres such as the bolero, the doo-wop, ballads, R&B, Calypso, Bossa Nova, and early rock and roll. And about the DVD, Music, History, and Emotion fueled this dynamic, award-winning tribute to Los Zafiros, the Beatles of 1960s Cuba. 30 years after their breakup, two surviving band members, Manuel Galbán and Miguel Cancio, reunite in the streets of present-day Havana, a place full of unforgettable songs and memories for them and for their still loyal fans. Family members, fellow artists, and friends weigh in, creating a stirring and definitive portrait of the Sapphires, Los Zafiros. I read that because it's just so succinct, and it really speaks exactly to what this is, especially the part about speaking to family members, fellow artists, and friends. And they do create a stirring and definitive portrait of Los Zafiros. And how, when you went to do this, when you met Miguel and went back with him to Cuba, and met with Manuel and did all those wonderful street scenes and interviewing family members. I mean, what did that feel like?
Like a vortex opening up and a big world revealing itself. You go in fairly clean, fairly innocent, and it affects. You learn as you go, just like people watching the film years later experience it. You're experiencing it in real time. We were supposed to film in September of 2001, and then 9/11 happened, and we delayed it 2 months, and we decided we better go in now, otherwise it's going to close up. And we did, and there was that historical tension involved. Anyway, it was still unforgettable, really. Everyone who worked on it, there and here, lots of cooperation with the Ministry of Culture and with Cuban archives and so on to tell this story.
You know, when you first introduced this to me, and I thought, okay, it's going to be a film about Los Zafiros, but I just wasn't prepared to be so moved and touched by it. And it's really remarkable that you were able to bring that to the screen, because it's not an easy thing to do. And you talk about the feeling music. I mean, this DVD, this film is just all about feeling and about remembrances and remembering good times, but still the friendships and things that have been forged and that will be around for a long time. It's just because their music is immemorial, and especially since it's being carried forward by the Los Nuevos Zafiros, and certainly because the people in Cuba won't forget. They remember them. Well, we can talk all the time we want, but let's play another song. We're going to play Y Sabes Bien. Okay? All right. Here we go with Los Zafiros once again. Oh, I need to remind you the DVD is offered as a premium for a pledge of $60 or more. Just give us a call right now at 818-985-5735, 818-985-5735. Just $60 for your pledge.
Sabes bien que yo te quiero, sabes bien que yo te adoro, sabes bien que ya no puedo vivir sin ti. Sabes bien que yo te he dado un amor puro y sincero, y aún así sigues creyendo que no te quiero.
Que me afarte, que me crees, yo te di mi corazón. Con cariño, con ternura, con amor, con devoción.
Sabes bien que yo te quiero, sabes bien que yo te adoro, sabes bien que ya no puedo vivir sin ti. Sabes bien que yo te quiero, sabes bien que yo te adoro, sabes bien que ya no puedo vivir sin ti. Sabes bien que yo te he dado un amor puro y sincero, y aún así sigues creyendo que no te quiero.
Que me afarte, que me crees, yo te di mi corazón. Con cariño, con ternura, con amor, con devoción.
Sabes bien que yo te quiero, sabes bien que yo te adoro, sabes bien que ya no puedo vivir sin ti.
back here in the studio talking to Lorenzo De Stefano about the wonderful DVD, the film that he did on Los Zafiros, or the Sapphires, Music from the Edge of Time, which we're offering as a premium for a pledge of $60 or more. And I know you've garnered a number of awards for this. The list is kind of long, but the Imagen Award, the Berkeley Film and Video Festival, lots of things. But tell us about your experience when it was presented at the Havana Film Festival.
Yeah, that was a year after we shot it. It was not the final version, but it was the version we had at the time. And we were invited to join this great festival in December of 2002. And, it played a number of times. Cubans were very moved by it. They were surprised that it was made by a North American filmmaker. Many of them came up to me and says, "You gave me my youth back." We couldn't believe that somebody from the outside was able to tell this story without politics. There's a little political framework of the times, but we stringently stayed away from that. Advised by Cuban Americans and Cubans who agree on nothing, practically. They agreed on this, that I should focus on the people and the music, and it was good advice.
Yeah. Well, I can't imagine how the film might have been different if you had not, but it seems to me like it's pretty much perfect the way you did it. And you were mentioning some of the archival footage you got. You mentioned what a wonderful quality it was.
Yeah, it was shot on 35 millimeter film, black and white at the time, of course, and it was preserved at ICRT, which is a television archive, and ICAIC, the film institute there, was cooperative as well. Yeah, that level of cooperation surprised me, because when the wall goes up, the door closes and you can't get anything done anywhere. But Cuba especially, they're very proprietary about their history, as they should be. They've been exploited a lot. And so, the footage was remarkable. We had to reprocess it digitally a lot, and we did some colorization and to it. But, it's preserved. It was in the basements of these old buildings in Havana, and boxes, and the archivists are heroes to me. Librarians and archivists, they're important people who never get any kudos for what they do. Yeah,
it's amazing how much would be lost if things weren't saved by people who understand the value of preserving all of that. So it's just remarkable. I can't really tell our listeners how much I really enjoyed this, watching the DVD myself, because it's just very heartwarming. It's very touching. Great clips, great not only from the past, some of the vintage footage that you have, but also just the contemporary footage again of Miguel. Oh, and what I also forgot was that you interview some experts, people we know. You talked to oh my goodness, Harry Kim, Alan Guy,
Luis
Conte, and
Tom Schnabel.
Oh my goodness, my mind is just going back.
Howard Dratch.
Yeah.
From Roots of Rhythm.
Arturo Gomez Cruz.
Right, Arturo
who I
Gomez.
worked with in Miami for a number of years. So
he's
I was
at KUVO
he's
Denver
in Denver now.
Yeah.
I just spoke to him recently, but I wasn't expecting him when Arturo showed up. I thought, oh, that's Arturo. Yeah. So it's just wonderful that you talk to experts. Like I say, we know Harry Kim, we know Alan Geik, we know Luis Conte here in Los Angeles. So it's really fun. So I'm recommending that all of you should make this part of your collection, because you're just going to really enjoy it. It's just wonderful. So we are offering it as a premium for your pledge of $60 or more. Just give us a call now at 818-985-5735. Hit 2 to get to the call center. And we are running out of time, Lorenzo, so I think I'm just going to have you back. You don't have to come back in person. We can do it on the phone, because you have another project you're working on, or you thought might be good for the...
Well, sure. That's it's called Hearing is Believing. It came out in 2017 about Rachel Flowers, a young musician who's been blind since birth, who's a phenomenal composer, musician out of Oxnard, so still Southern California. The website for the film, loszafirosfilm.com, there's a lot more information. It's a bilingual website, so anyone who wants to check that out. Talmadge Farlow, about the great jazz guitar player, talfarlowfilm.com. So I've done 3 feature documentaries. As a failed musician, I consider that my I've kind of apologized for being such a bad musician.
Well, this is a major contribution to the musical history, no doubt about that, Lorenzo. So, again, I really want to thank you so much for making the DVD available to us as a premium during the fund drive, and I hope that many of our listeners are calling right now to pledge for it because they just cannot go wrong. It's very moving, and I thank you so much for bringing it to our attention.
Pleasure to support KPFK. Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, and we're going to close now listening to La Oración. What can you tell us about this tune?
Mi Oración, My Prayer, which is the famous Platters tune, which ends the film, and which is Ignacio Elejalde, the high voice in it, at his most sublime, really. You'll never hear anything quite like that.
And again, what was his name?
Ignacio Elejalde.
And again, wow. Okay, you guys. So snatch this up right now. 818-985-5735. Hit 2 to get to the call center. The Los Zafiros, the Sapphires. And just before I let you go, I was wondering, where did they get that name from, the Sapphires? But you reveal that secret in them. Well, but maybe we won't even tell people where they got that name from. So they'll have to get they'll have to get the DVD, because I wonder, why did they get the Sapphire? It's a perfect name.
It is.
And the reason they use that name is a great story. And to know that the reason is still around, it's being enjoyed by a member even today, right?
He wears it. It's a ring, a sapphire ring. Right. We give that much away.
Okay.
And the story behind him getting the ring is also wonderful.
Okay. All right. So a little mystery for you. So don't forget 818-985-5735. Hit 2 to get to the call center to make Los Zafiros DVD yours for a pledge of $60 or more. So thanks again, Lorenzo. Lorenzo Di Stefano, you can look all the stuff up online, and we'll have you back to talk more.
Thank you,
Lorenzo. We really enjoyed this. So again, La Oración with Los Zafiros.
Cuando llega la luz y los pájaros duermen, cuando ya sale el sol, yo comienzo a cantar esta oración tan feliz que esta linda oración que no quiero entender, y esta gran sensación perdón por el perdido amor que hay en mi corazón.